This week on the show.
We're looking back at some of our favourite travel adventures so far this year. From taking the sting out of a dive with jellyfish in the Philippines.
Gosh, these stingless jellyfish, they look like little mushrooms.
We got it.
To an uphill odyssey on France's Mont Saint-Michel.
These are the last steps, Eddie.
Are you sure?
Yes.
And jumping aboard a balloon with a view in Switzerland. There's something quite magical about being up here.
And welcome to the programme. And I am thrilled to report that spring has arrived in London at last, after what seemed a very long, cold and wet winter. So it gives us a great excuse to start thinking about travel again and taking a look back at some of our favourite adventures from recent months here on the show. Up first, let's remind ourselves of a trip that Carmen took in March to the Philippines. It's a fascinating country made up of more than 7,000 islands. But Carmen chose just one of these to take the plunge and go swimming with some creatures you'd usually be trying to avoid.
I've left Siargao to visit Sohoton Cove National Park on the island of Bucas Grande, which I'm told is one of the few places on Earth you'll find a certain, rather slimy creature that's not normally that popular. Jellyfish are amazing creatures. They're tough and have been around for eons. But with their foreboding tentacles equipped with venomous stings, it's no surprise they aren't many people's favourite animal.
Sohoton Cove is the realm of the stingless jellyfish.
The sanctuary is otherworldly. Huge rocks and dense jungle punch up into the sky.
Gosh, these stingless jellyfish, they look like little mushrooms. Would you eat them? No. The water's so clear. So is there a good way to hold them? Am I holding it correctly?
The most comfortable way, I guess, would be to hold them bell down, because those tentacle ones are the tiny, tiny stingers.
Oh, these ones have tiny stings, but it won't hurt me.
It won't hurt you.
I don't feel any pain, he's just a little bit slimy. So why won't he hurt me if he's got stingers?
The stingers are reserved for their prey, mostly microorganisms and zooplankton that they need to eat. But humans are not part of their diet, so you're fine.
Okay.
This may look like a lot of jellyfish, but from April you won't be able to move for them once their breeding season begins.
So why do they like being in this part of the cove?
The tides are very strong outside, so this acts as their sanctuary that keeps them safe from predators, from strong currents that can carry them elsewhere.
Wow. So they're protected by the rocks and the small entrance.
And the small entrance and the sandbar.
These jellyfish are resilient, but there are concerns that tourist activities could cause problems. Tourist bodies here want visitors to be more mindful when they visit.
Well, the Department of Tourism has said that this cove specifically, this jellyfish sanctuary, has millions upon millions of jellyfish, and they do not compare to the amount of tourists that come here. So as long as you try to practice ethical and sustainable ecotourism, it would be good, especially listening to our boatmen and just following all of the regulations set in place.
They say to avoid polluting their home with any rubbish and wear reef-safe sunscreen to protect the ecosystem. Also, to treat the jellyfish with respect. Only pick them up with advice from a guide and avoid kicking or bumping into them when swimming. Seeing these incredible creatures really shows you just how weird and wonderful nature can be.
Carmen there in the Philippines. And it does go without saying, unless you're going to that very specific idyllic place, please avoid swimming with jellyfish. Okay, next up, we're off to France, where last month, Addie went to experience a very different side to island life in Mont-Saint-Michel, which this year is celebrating its 1000th anniversary. And he got to meet some of the people who live there, right smack bang in the middle of a world-famous tourist attraction.
How on earth did they construct something like this 1,000 years ago?
Yeah, this is the best of medieval engineering, and it started off as a sanctuary dedicated to Saint Michel, Saint Michael, in the year 708. Then it took off, you know, the pilgrims started to come. They had to come across the bay, so walk through the sands, and then it developed in the 11th century with the construction of the church.
The abbey sits at the top of the cliff, surrounded by the village below.
Even nowadays, there are quicksands out there, there are lots of strong currents.
So it must have been a really important site for people to want to make that kind of journey to see this
it was
place.
a journey of a lifetime.
It's just quite funny to come in here and the contrast with the medieval look, and then you've got shops.
Yeah, people are often surprised, but don't forget there were pilgrims coming here.
Yeah.
They needed to be housed for 1 or 2 nights. So there's been inns and souvenir shops even for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Of course, there were religious kind of souvenirs, medals, you know, rosaries, these kind of things.
So what's it like taking tourists around here then?
Well, it depends on the time of the year, really. It can be a very nice, peaceful time, you know. But I tend to like less and less working here in the middle of summer.
Because, why is that?
Because there's too many people. But it's beautiful, of course.
A new governing body recently took over the running of Mont-Saint-Michel with plans to improve the tourist experience. They're encouraging people to visit off-season and steering them away from the souvenir stores towards more of the surrounding area. But accessibility is still a bit of a problem. It's so steep and so slippery that even this electric attachment is struggling to get up here. So my strategy is to get as much speed as possible up that hill, and as soon as I start slowing down, I'll be like, Salad! Save me! On y va?
C'est parti.
Excusez-moi! Attention, attention! Coming through!
Attention.
Salad!
Ouais.
We got it! Come on! The island's governing body told us that making any changes to this protected historic site is difficult, but they're hoping to find a solution within the next few years. Only around 30 people live here on Mont-Saint-Michel. Bonjour! Bonjour, Inez and Jean are 2 of them. Their home has been in Jean's family since before the 17th century and is full of trinkets and antiques. Tell me about this.
C'est absolument magnifique. C'est une maquette qui a été fabriquée vers 1830 et on reconnaît un certain nombre de maisons aussi. Et notre maison, Pignot.
This is your house?
Oui.
And what is it like to live in this place day to day?
C'est un quotidien assez dur, au fait, parce que pour faire les courses, il faut aller à 10-15 km chercher tout ça. Nous sommes à vélo. Et puis il faut aussi se frayer un chemin entre les touristes, mais ça vaut la peine.
On vit dans le ciel. La lumière.
On se tourne vers la baie et la lumière est incroyable. Elle change tout le temps, c'est magique.
Up in the abbey, the bell is rung for evening prayer. The abbey is home to a small number of monks and nuns, members of the monastic fraternities of Jerusalem. Some of them spend their mornings down in the village, tending to their guest house or working part-time jobs to help cover the order's expenses.
Yes, it's really a unique place. And, you know, also we are here to say that this place has been made first for God and for worship.
Would you just like it just to be purely holy?
No, that's, you know, that's the way it is. You cannot change the reality. When we come here in Mont-Saint-Michel, we know that there is going to be a lot of noise during the services, that some groups are going to walk during the Mass or whatever, but we are here for them also.
Back outside, I've taken to my crutches.
These are the last steps, Eddie.
Are you sure?
Yes, they are the last steps.
Is there champagne up here for me? And now we have to go down.
And now we have to go down.
Oh my days. That view is pretty amazing.
And look at this.
Wow.
Look at there's the shadow of Mont-Saint-Michel on the sand.
Oh yeah.
That's the best time of the day. When I come to this place in particular, the North Tower as we call it, for me it sums it all up. I often compare the Mont-Saint-Michel as being the jewel and the bay, the box. So that's the jewel in the box, you've got it all.
And that image has been there for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Up next on our look back at the past couple of months here on the Travel Show, we're heading to Morocco and the simply enormous Medina at Fez. Rajan headed there in January. He left his smartphone behind and had to rely on his inner compass to find his way through the mind-boggling maze of streets and passageways from one side to the other. Let's see how he did.
This is Bab Boujloul. It's one of the 7 gateways into this walled city, the Medina. And my task, my challenge, is to go from here to another gateway, another of the 7 gateways, as quickly as possible. Now, you may say, very easy. I think you might be wrong, because there are 9,000 alleyways here, which makes it the biggest Medina in the world. Am I allowed to look at Google Maps? No, I'm not. I think that is actually going down a blind alley. I'm not going to do that. Oh, now we've got some choices to make. No, that way, I think. I saw a sign earlier on which said, no donkeys. This guy has got through somehow. But some people who are actually born within the city walls never leave the city walls during their lifetime. Whoa! That was close. There's a man in more of a hurry than even me. Some of these hats would be perfect. I would, honestly, this is the kind of place I would stop at if I had time. But I have not got time.
Gracias. Thank you so much.
This is the square called Sefarin. And as you can hear, this is the original Tin Pan Alley. We have walked from one gate to another through the Medina of Fez. And can I say, it's been an experience.
Rajan there finding his feet in Fez earlier this year. Well, now it's time to head across the Atlantic to New York, where they're bidding a fond farewell to the longest ever running musical on Broadway. After over 13,000 performances, the New York production of Phantom of the Opera is making its final curtain call. So we headed to the Big Apple to meet the cast and crew, who are saying goodbye to the show that's become part of their lives.
I still cry every time I see it. I'm a softie, what can I tell you?
It has permeated every aspect of pop culture. And I think there's very few musicals that can do that.
It has been a part of my life for almost half of my adult life.
Somehow I thought that the show would be running when I was gone.
It's hard to put into words because I love what I do. makes me a bit teary.
I was actually just finishing another show, and I hadn't seen my daughter in a while, and then I got this audition from my agents, and I said, no, I don't want to do that. He stopped and he turned around in his chair and he said, Ben, if you don't do that audition, you will regret it for the rest of your life. And I figured a good way of getting out some emotions was to like tell my daughter how important it would be if I were to get the job. And I like kind of got the panic attack out of my system, and literally my phone rang and it was my agent telling me I had gotten it. And it's a frustrating thing because the costs have risen since the post-pandemic world. So the show closing is very bittersweet.
Welcome to the real Phantom Slayer.
It felt like my years of studying and practice had paid off. This is the first show I ever saw on Broadway, and it is my Broadway debut, so it's a beautiful, beautiful full circle moment for me. It meant that for other people and for other, young Black girls who would come to see me or would see my face and see me playing this role, it meant that they could have a chance and they could see themselves playing a role like this too, and kind of affirming their hopes and dreams in a way that I didn't necessarily have growing up.
Coming closer now to these final performances, I feel an enormous amount of gratitude, and I feel honored.
It's just, there's nothing not to love about it. It's all challenging and it's all wonderful, and I'm just so lucky to be able to work on it.
I do feel like Broadway's losing part of its foundation with the show closing.
I don't know how I'll feel the day after the final performance. It's going to be an emotional journey.
Pride is an understatement as to what I would feel. This show is much bigger than the rest of us, and it has been a wonderful, wonderful ride indeed.
Phantom of the Opera receiving its final ovation there in New York City. And before we say, oh, that's all folks, there's just enough time to show you an adventure I had in Switzerland back in February, where I got to experience the most incredible views. But must be said, it's probably not for those without a head for heights, though it was the highlight of my year so far. I hope you enjoy it too.
I'm in Switzerland, and I've travelled to the Chateau d'Eu. Set among the beautiful Swiss Alps, once a year this small town brings hot air balloon enthusiasts from around the world for a festival like no other. The festival began over 40 years ago and has grown from just a few balloons to the 60+ balloons they have coming today. Back when it started, it was the idea of founder Charles-André Ramsier.
We started ballooning here in '76, and ballooning in the Alps was brand new. Nobody was doing it. I had seen balloons in US, but in the Alps it's a new dimension. A basket in the sky is like a balcony in the sky. It's a dream. It's beautiful. You know where you take off, when you take off. You never know where you land and when you land.
Yeah, this is what I understood this morning, listening to the pilot briefing. Small changes, that wouldn't affect many other leisure activities have such a big impact with the hot air balloons.
Yes, and what you have to know that every season is different to fly. That's why if you want to be a good pilot, you have to fly every week. Otherwise, you are a bad pilot.
With some balloons starting to take to the skies, I join Nick in the basket. And within just a few seconds, we are whisked high up into the air.
Nick, can you tell me what you're doing? I mean, there seems to be all sorts of things going on.
Yeah, so at the moment all we're doing is keeping the balloon nice and level. So we're putting in little bits of heat every now and again to keep the buoyancy up in the balloon.
So tell me a little bit about the specific challenges of a landscape like this.
So obviously, up on the side of the mountains, there's a lot of snow, a lot of trees, but not a lot of roads. So you're having to land as close to a road as possible to make the retrieval of all the kit easy. The mountains also produce a different climate, so there can be a lot different wind patterns and things that develop around the mountains.
It seems to be almost a lifestyle, this passion for ballooning. What is it that you love about ballooning?
Very much so. I mean, it's the tranquility as well. Up here, you know, aside from the helicopter, it's peaceful. There's nothing. And, you know, the views, you don't get this out of an aeroplane window. And there's a really big sense of community around ballooning. You know, it is a niche sport, I suppose, and we're all of similar ilk, I suppose.
This word gets used a lot, so bear with me, but there's something quite magical about being up here. Usually when you're at this height, you're either, you know, on a parasail with wind, you know, in your face, or in a plane or a helicopter, the thrum of the engine and the rotor. And up here it's silent. And there's barely a stir of wind. And it's just like we're sort of on a platform in the middle of the air with this incredible view out over the mountains. I think there's also something that appeals to the romantic in me, really just sort of harking back to the earliest days of air travel, you know, the balloon setting off around the world in 80 days. There's something really special about this.
Well, that was a truly spectacular trip in so many ways. And sadly, that means it's the end of our show. Thank you so much for joining us on our travels again. And I've got to tell you, we've got some fantastic stuff coming your way in the next couple of months, so do keep watching. Until then, you can find some great content from the BBC by checking here. And until next time, from me, Crystal Larwood, and the rest of the Travel Show team, it's goodbye.